Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the book Dune, House Corrino by Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert. This is the third book in the Prelude to Dune's trilogy. I think it should more accurately be called the Houses of Dune trilogy. You have the first book, Dune House Atreides, which I read and reviewed for the channel. I gave it an 8.5. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And then I read Dune House Harkonnen, which I thought was a very good book. I gave it a 7 out of 10. Not quite as good as the first one, but still very good. And now I have the third book, Dune House Corrino. As the books would imply, the first book has the full cast, but really focuses on the Atreides. Book 2 really focuses on the Harkonnens, although the Atreides still play a pretty major role. But it isn't until the third book that House Corrino really steps into the limelight. And this book, I thought, was a very good ending to the trilogy. It not only ties up the plot lines from this trilogy, but it also sets things up for the first Dune novel. This trilogy spans about 20 years of storytelling. The first book starts about 40-ish years before the events of Dune, and then by the time you get to this book, we're only about 20 years away from the events of Dune. And this book is setting up the political situation, the houses. You're also seeing the interpersonal character situations and the production and business issues. In this book, you basically have a couple of plot lines. You have the Ix, which was taken over by the Tleilaxu. They are finally the House Vernius, led by Romber, finally decide they're going to take back Ix with the help of Kaladin with Leto Atreides. So that's one plot line, the retaking of Ix, which I think is one of the most exciting plot lines in the book. You also have the plot line that is the Corrino plot line, where Shaddam, the Emperor, is planning to take away all the spice reserves from the houses so that he can instead use his fake spice called Amal, which is intended to make him a lot of money and make him more powerful, and also just make everyone fear him. And that plot line was fantastic. And then you have the third plot line, which is the House Atreides plotline, specifically around Lady Jessica, who is about to bear her child, who she knows is a son, which we know is Paul. And she was instructed not to have a son. So when she knows that once it's revealed that she has a son, the Bene Gesserit are going to be very angry with her. And so Lady Jessica is actually summoned to another planet to a very dangerous situation for her in order to have the baby there. And so you have all of these three main plot lines. There's more going on, but that's the gist of the book. And I have to say, the first two I mentioned, the retaking Ix plotline and the House Corrino taking over the Spice plotline, was great. The plotline with the plotline with Lady Jessica, unfortunately, fell flat. That's what keeps this book from a top rating. I will say this is the best prose of any Kevin J. Anderson, and by extension, Brian Herbert book that I've read so far. There are some great lines of dialogue among characters. There's some great quotes in the book. One of the quotes in the book I just thought was endlessly fascinating, and I just really pondered it for a while. And then there's also some great themes in the book. There's some great deep themes about how power corrupts. Actually, there's a great theme about the need for balance of power, for checks and balances in government. There's also some great themes in here about greed and about how much you should help others versus how much you should help yourself. These are all great themes that are perfectly explored in this book. So this is, by extension, one of the more deeper books. Despite the fact that it has like that boring subplot, it's still a very fast-paced, very exciting book. Took me a little bit to get into it, and then I read 200 pages, and then 200 pages in 200 pages one day, 200 pages the next day. So I basically read 2/3 of the book in the course of 2 days because it was just so exciting, especially in the middle and the end. I think that The problem this book had is, as a prequel, it was like setting things up right for the events of Dune. So certain things, specifically with the Lady Jessica storyline, was kind of predictable, and you kind of knew how it had to end up. But I didn't know how the stuff on Ix would happen. I actually, even though we know where Shaddam Corrino is in the movie, and it's right in the original Dune book, we don't know how he got there necessarily, and so seeing him get to that point was actually quite interesting. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. It didn't have like a standout character necessarily, except maybe Corrino and Fenring. And maybe even Robert Vernius. But overall, I really enjoyed the book. I would put it on par with Book 1. I think Book 1 has some better character development and some better descriptions of places, but Book 3 has deeper themes and really good action throughout. But really, the whole trilogy, I'm very pleased with. I think that the whole House Prelude to Dune trilogy was really solid. I think that the fandom generally is split on it, but most of the fans I know don't particularly like the House, the Kevin Anderson, Brian Herbert books. They feel they're cheap and not well produced. And I understand why they think that when comparing them to the original Dune, because it's not quite as philosophical. But the political stuff, the action, the adventure storytelling, I think works really well in this universe. And I think that the world building is really good in these books and helps me understand the Frank Herbert stuff better. So as a whole, I just think this was a great trilogy, and this is a great finale to the trilogy. Book ended particularly well, but book 2 is still pretty good. My one criticism of these editions is that they're so bland. I mean, it feels like it's the same cover 3 times, just with slight alterations. Whereas the mass market paperback editions, you have Dune House Atreides with the image of Dune on there, which is just gorgeous. And then you have Dune House Harkonnen, which shows the Harkonnens on Getty Prime, which Getty Prime just looks awesome in this. And then you have Dune House Corrino, which I assume this is Lady Anarol, and this is supposed to be Kaitan, but still a gorgeous cover. I mean, these are top tier covers for. So I really enjoyed reading this book. If you've read the Prelude to Dune trilogy, let me know your thoughts, specifically on book 3. How did you think they ended everything? Did they stick the landing, or did they not stick the landing? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. But until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.